Let me ask you something. If you could take a break and travel the world, would you do it?
Retire young, work old. Come back and work when I know what I'm working for.
What if I told you that money is not the main thing that keeps you here, that it's something else completely?
Does that make sense to you?
Now let me ask you something else. Aren't you frustrated by how every single day you're bombarded with tiny bits of information that lack context and you don't see the bigger picture, what it all means to you?
Quiet, quiet, quiet.
Order! 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 Stop it! You're capable of much better than that.
You do know that that's precisely what makes us so easy to be manipulated online, don't you?
Seems to me so blindingly obvious that no sensible person would disagree with the proposition.
This is me on TV. I'm doing your usual report on a Brexit nightmare. And this is me saying goodbye to TV. I mean, quitting my job. Why the jolly face, you ask? Well, mainly because I was not going to be your average unemployed journalist. What I had planned was a once-in-a-lifetime level of awesomeness.
Hi there, I'm Alina, and I'm looking for a story. I'm a Romanian journalist, and this is probably going to be a report unlike any other I've done so far. I'm going to let you in on the story of a story. A very personal one, but which I hope will tell you something about struggles many young people face today in this ever-changing world where they constantly have to reinvent themselves. I'm going to tell you how and why I decided to quit TV in order to see the world I had been talking about all along. This is basically going to be the context of everything you're going to find from now on lookingforastory.com, on my YouTube and podcast channels, and on all my social media accounts. Yes, I am everywhere. To make a 10-year-old story very short, basically I had been doing journalism for over a decade, mostly covering foreign affairs, as in the world. I had been to all sorts of places and met foreign leaders, bright minds, basic human beings who had something to say.
This is me on top of the Grand Canyon, where I did a very interesting piece about gun control. This is me and my pink scarf and fluffy girly hat in the middle of the Ukrainian revolution. That's basically the definition of a journalist inexperienced in covering conflict zones. I mean, it was freezing and there were snipers, and I was fashionably dressed for a stroll in a Christmas market. Less embarrassingly, here I am with former US First Lady Rosalind Carter, who gave me a fellowship that supported a year-long investigation on mental health. That year of incredibly hard work eventually exposed the biggest lie in the Romanian army, that we didn't have cases of PTSD. Moving on, this is me in Turkey, next to the Iraqi and Syrian border. That was my first contact with the refugees that we would hear so much of in Europe over the following years. And more recently, that's me interviewing the Irish Prime Minister in Bucharest and the European Commission President in Strasbourg at the European Parliament.
You get the point, right? Well, basically, starting from 2015, I had been working for a TV station here in Bucharest, covering foreign affairs for the flagship program of that network. After a couple of years, though, I became increasingly unhappy with what I did, with the lack of field reporting and the focus on a handful of topics such as fake news, Russia, Trump. I also struggled with some anxiety episodes and can now tell you that I think there are very few things in life that can be as terrifying as having a panic attack on live television. When that happens, you feel like all your layers of makeup, all your clothes are falling off at the same time, and that everybody sees the most naked version of you there ever was. And then came the turning point. It was in late 2017. Me and my husband decided that we would do that one big thing that a lot of people dream of throughout their lives, but never really do get around doing it. You know, see the world for a while.
And what do you recommend for yourself, Doctor?
A holiday?
For how long?
As long as I need.
You mean just to play?
No. No, I've been working since I was 10. I want to find out why I'm working. So, as soon as I get enough money together, I'm going to knock off for a while.
Quit?
Quit. I want to save part of my life for myself. There's a catch to it, though. It's got to be part of the young part. You know, retire young, work old. Come back and work when I know what I'm working for.
Now, these are struggles that keep reinventing themselves. The hipster literature today calls it mini retirement. On YouTube, for example, there's a wave of digital nomads, and I'm sure you've come across some of their channels. Most of them are basically young people who can't find their place in just one place, and who are looking for inspiration and awe into the world. There's a bigger picture though. For example, did you know that by next year, the number of trips made by young travelers is expected to have grown by 50% as compared to 2013? There's a movement of sorts which seems to have as an underlying drive the need for rediscovery, either personal or societal. A lot of thinkers, and probably Yuval Noah Harari is the best known among them, talk about the looming struggle for relevancy in a world where AI does more and more things, and does them better than we ever did. As for me, what I wanted was to have this life-changing personal experience, but to use it in a way that could take me back to my journalistic roots. And this, my friends, is how an amazing transition began for me. My transition from this to this, or my transition from this to this. Meet my new closet for a while. You know how I told you that money is not the main thing that keeps you from traveling long term? Over the past year or so, I realized how much money we uselessly spent on things we actually didn't need, because when we didn't have them anymore, we didn't feel that we missed them. So basically, that's why I say we didn't need them. Yes, we were more cautious with our expenses, eating out less frequently than before, or we stopped buying stuff just because we liked them. We took into consideration whether or not that particular thing would be useful or would fit in that backpack. But on the other hand, we did go on vacations, we did go out with our friends who maintain their lifestyle, obviously. If you're interested in this, I can detail the lessons I've learned from saving up money for this mini retirement. I can detail this in a later video, but the bottom line is that if you have an average income, and I think if you don't have very big loans, this is really doable. With the caveat that I think when you have, I'm assuming that when you have children, the logistics of it gets way more complicated. Over the next year or so, we told very few people about our go away plans. And I think partly because we were afraid we would chicken out. That was an option. That was an option until very recently. But sometimes after a long week, I felt like shouting it to the world. By the summer of 2018, we had begun actual planning and shopping, since I never really did own comfortable walking shoes or a backpack for that matter. And also it was time to tell our parents and our close friends about our plans. My husband, who barely got his small company off the ground, discussed it with his main client, and together we decided to do the more practical and sane thing, which was to do this whole thing in 3-month installments for as long as we could afford and enjoy it. I set my deadline for leaving the station for November, and on October 31st, at 10 p.m. after our program was over, I told my boss the then editor-in-chief of the station and anchor of that program. I told him that I was leaving. I did my final program on the 15th of November, and that was it. If you're interested in seeing how that day unfolded, there's a sort of behind the scenes video of it linked in the description bar below. We now get to the second question, the information siege. Let me show you something.
Pope Francis endorsed Donald Trump during the 2016 US presidential election. Hillary Clinton was behind a child sex ring that involved a pizza place in DC. Ukraine will declare Adolf Hitler a national hero. Migrants coming to Europe got UN debit cards and George Soros spent $500,000 on them.
Laugh all you want, but these are things huge amounts of people actually believed. In the case of the Democrat sex ring thing, the Pizzagate as it's called, a guy from North Carolina actually showed up at that pizza place and shot a firearm in DC. That's how much he believed that incredibly stupid fake story. This is basically the paradox of our times. We have information at our fingertips more than ever before, but somehow are less informed. It's not just you, the audience. I think we as journalists are in an equally perilous place because we have entered into this never-ending cycle where we feed ourselves with, and then you, with tiny bits of information. And because we have too much of it, because the attention span of the public seems to have reached goldfish lows, because we fail to make you trust us and trust that it's worth sticking around for more than 15 seconds. Because all of this, we bombard you with useless, uncontextualized information. We know that, and we know you know that. There's a worldwide trend now where people get their news off social media because what your friend shares on the world seems to be more relevant than what you see shared by a media outlet. And that's a very dangerous place to be in as a society. And this is what happens when we get too much information and we lack stories. And I don't think that's sustainable. We need stories. Contrary to the cliches, I don't think information is power if it lacks context and meaning. It's just noise nowadays. And everything I said before about how the media bombards you with information, it's not, I don't mean to be judgmental, because that's something I actually did for a lot of years, and that's just how the media ecosystem works now. So remember how I bragged about seeing the world for a while? Well, ever the journalist, I think I'll do more than travel. Well, actually, I know I'll do more than travel. This is how I'm trying to make amends for basically all the times I think I could have done a better job as a journalist. I created Looking for a Story as a platform. My travels will give me this amazing opportunity to get rid of the day-to-day stress and the constraints of a newsroom, but also to, since I'll be on the road and on the move so much, it will give me a huge opportunity to come across a bunch of interesting people in different places and cultures and countries. People who will have some of them will have very interesting stories and will have something to say about things that are relevant to people everywhere, about how life is to be lived, about what makes them happy, what makes them sad, what makes them frustrated, what they think could be improved in their society. That's what you'll find on Looking for a Story. That's what Looking for a Story is. Sometimes you'll find blog posts, sometimes you'll find podcasts or vlogs, or sometimes, as it happens now, you'll find all of them. But regardless of the packaging, what I want to do is to give you stories and to convince you that you need them and you missed having them in your day-to-day life. A journalist isn't a journalist without an audience. So that's where I need you guys. Follow my blog, follow my podcast, subscribe to this YouTube channel, get in touch on social media. Yes, I am everywhere, as I said. But most importantly, give me feedback. Tell me what stories inspire you. What do you miss most? I'll start looking for stories on February 18th. Coincidentally, that's a week after my 30th birthday, which is today. Yay! So that's me. I'm this journalist who quit her job after 10 years in the newsroom to rediscover stories and the world right after she turned 30.